Hi, this is Rahaf Aboulhassan speaking. I'm a chemical engineering student from the American University of Beirut.
Hi, this is Sahera Fakher speaking. I am a current chemical engineering student at the American University of Beirut, but today I'm turning into a geologist for
Today we're turning into geologists for you. We're taking a course of geology with Dr. Hamad Janju.
The course I'm currently taking covers the earth and energy resources.
Today I'll be discussing with you one of the two sedimentary rock types, carbonate rocks. Ta-da! So I'll be discussing the processes of their formation, their contents, the different types, some examples, and some of their uses. In the ocean, when fish and organisms die, they form layers of dead remains. This is the first process in the formation of carbonate rocks. After that, burial takes place. So the different layers accumulate one after the other and they get buried deeper and get compacted together. Then the diagenesis process liquefies the rock and it forms a carbonate rock. This subtype of sedimentary rocks, the carbonate rocks, forms 14% of the total sedimentary rocks in Earth crust. As for the structure and composition of carbonate rocks, they are primarily composed of carbonate minerals with CO3-2 anions. They have two major types, dolomites and limestones. Limestones are mostly composed of calcium carbonate groups, calcite, whereas dolomites are mostly composed of dolostones, which is a calcium-magnesium carbonate group. These rocks have varying properties within small sections of their reservoirs, and this makes them hard to characterize. Limestone reservoirs are composed of fossils ranging from single-celled organisms to large-shelled animals. There is also a very common feature called layering, where we can see different layers of the rock one over the other clearly. And the rocks are deposited very close to where they were formed. That is because there is no transportation process in their formation. So the presence of dolomites and limestones shows the previous existence of oceans and certain animals in the location where they are found. Now let me give you some examples of carbonate rocks. We already discussed limestones and dolomites. Oolites are the most sorted carbonate rocks because they have grains of similar sizes and similar shapes. In addition to that, there's chemical and biochemical phosphate and chalk. Chalk reacts to acids, so in order to characterize it, we can put a drop of acid on it and see if it reacts or not. Now, their uses vary. One of the benefits of carbonate reservoirs is the fact that they hold some hydrocarbons. More than 60% of the world's oil reservoirs and more than 40% of the world's gas reservoirs are carbonate rock reservoirs. In addition to that, when these rocks are extracted, we can use them in several industries. For instance, limestone and chalk are used in cement industry, and phosphates are used in the fertilizers industry. Now you know where some of the rocks you use on a daily basis or you can see in your daily life come from.
After my colleague has talked about carbonate rocks, today I will discuss clastic rocks. I will first discuss their formation. Second, I will discuss their structure and composition, and thirdly, I will be discussing some examples. Now on to the process of formation of these clastic rocks. The first step is weathering and erosion. The weathering of pre-existing rocks, such as pre-existing igneous rocks, pre-existing metamorphic rocks, or even pre-existing sedimentary rocks. We have two types of weathering. We have physical weathering as well as chemical weathering. Physical weathering happens basically when rocks are broken down, without any alteration in their chemical nature. For example, we have tree roots or even microorganisms that break down these rocks without a change in their chemical nature. On the other hand, we have chemical weathering. It happens when basically chemical reactions break down the bonds that hold the rocks together. We have an example of hydrolysis where water plays a major role in the dissolution of rocks. After rocks are broken down, the fragments are transported and carried. They're often carried by water. Water carries particles in rivers, from the smallest to the largest particles. We also have other transporting agents such as wind, which blows dust and sand. The third step includes deposition. So basically, sediments are deposited over time, layer upon layer, and the sediments are deposited horizontally. So basically, we have layers that get formed horizontally. The last step includes cementation and lithification. After deposition, the sediments are compacted by burial and cemented together into a solid, cohesive mass, reducing considerably their pore size as well as the water content. They then become sedimentary rocks. Now on to the second point I wanted to discuss today, which is structure and composition. Clastic rocks consist primarily of silicate minerals. The silicate group consists basically of a variety of silicon and oxygen-based minerals, such as feldspar, mica, clays, etc. For example, feldspar is used in glass manufacturing. Clastic rocks are also characterized based on two key elements: their grain size as well as their mineral composition. I want to show you 3 different sizes of sediments portrayed by items found in my home. The first category is gravels or pebbles. We can see here that gravels and pebbles are particles that have a diameter exceeding 2 mm. We can see here that these particles have a diameter bigger than 2 mm. The second category is coarse sand. Coarse sand particles have a diameter between 65 micrometers and 2 millimeters. We can see here basically that these little particles have a diameter between the range I just mentioned. On to the third category, which is silt or clay particles. Silt or clay are very fine particles, which here are portrayed by flour. Two examples of clastic rocks include shale rocks and conglomerate rocks. Shale rocks are composed of clay-sized weathering debris. Conglomerate rocks contain large rounded particles. It is also important to note that sandstone and conglomerate rocks form around 11% of the rocks around us.
Stay tuned for some more videos.